Hey guys, welcome into Fantasy Football Academy 2020. Happy Team Build Tuesday to you. Coming at you again with Professor Chet Yoder. Professor, how you doing?
I must feel special because you're having me on 2 shows in a row. I feel pretty good, a little lethargic to start the Monday, but now I'm kind of revved up because we got a show to go.
Hey, we do. Now, we're starting things off. We're kicking it off with some just mind-blowing news coming out of San Fran, and dare I say that we might have been one of the first shows to drop this bomb on the fantasy community that George Kittle could be opting out of the 2020 season. And to give a little more traction to this rumor, tell everybody what happened just a few hours ago.
They signed Jordan Reed, your boy, King, Pro Bowl tight end who doesn't have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but 7 concussions in his history.
Yeah.
But this is a guy who's very dynamic. He can do a lot for your offense. He's got one of those really, like I like to use the word sexy. He has got a sexy football physique. I'm going to say that. And if Kyle Shanahan can run a 2 tight end system, let's say Kittle stays with us, 2 tight end, 2 wide receivers, this Niner offense could be much more dynamic than it was really last year, where it was kind of up and down. I mean, it really didn't have much fantasy value. And it really opens up the run game. This does so much because Jordan Reed can block, he can catch, he can run. He's got great body. Can he stay healthy? Maybe even he worked for a half a season, he could do a lot for the 49ers. But what I'm saying is, yes, there is substance about George Kittle opting out. It seems like there's a little bit more realness now to that rumor with this move today, but 49ers are still trying to stay even keel about it.
Now, let me ask you this. Let's just say that Kittle and Jordan Reed are both there on the roster.
Right.
How much does that hurt Kittle, and how much does that boost Jimmy G?
Okay. If you are a fantasy football owner, you still want to jump on George Kittle. He will probably have more touches than maybe the naysayer might think with Jordan Reed being there as well, because George Kittle is still the primary target. This is going to help Jimmy G. It's going to open up the offense. The fantasy value might drop just a tad, but do not think about passing up on Kittle if he is available there. Obviously, you're not going to jump on him in the first round. You're going to wait till that second or third round, but the second or third tier is still top level. For Jordan Reed, obviously, he doesn't have any fantasy value. He's going to make the Niners more popular on offense. But that doesn't do anything for a fantasy football owner.
All right, now let's switch this around, and let's say that Kittle does opt out. How much, with you just said about the concussions with Reed and the injuries, trust me, as a Skins fan, I know how much Jordan Reed can mean to an offense. They channeled their passing game through Jordan Reed while he was available there, but the injuries were just astronomically high.
Right. If you have a bench spot to grab, and sometimes you get into this spot during the fantasy draft, and I know you have, Dean, and I have as well, where you have a player to get and you don't know who to get because all your possible bench dreams are all gone. Then Jordan Reed might be that guy you want to snag because he might have maybe a good 1 or 2 weeks to start off the season because he is going to get those touches if Kittle's out. The problem is how fast can he understand the system? But here's a connection. He is Kyle Shanahan's boy. There is a connection between those two. So there isn't a big learning curve between Jordan Reed and Kyle Shanahan's playbook. So that is something you want to watch out for. Obviously, we're going to know something probably in the coming week or 2 weeks about George Kittle. I think he's still a little ticked off that he's not got his contract extension. The pandemic's kind of gotten in the way as that as well. So a little sticky right now in the Bay Area, but good and bad. There's a good and bad stick right now.
Well, it's a good problem to have if things, go the way that we're thinking they're going to go or they could go with Kittle opting out. Jordan Reed, healthy Jordan Reed, with as much time as he's had off since he last played, he's had time to get healthy. He's had time to, kind of get back to where he used to be when he was
relatively young too, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned from a health standpoint for him personally, just with the concussions. He's a really good athlete, and as far as I can tell, a really good guy. I don't want to see him hurt unnecessarily, but it's his decision to play or not.
And remember, Dean, the wave of this concussion protocol and just the way it has really affected the NFL, especially. You've seen guys who've retired early because of this. So this is a very, very big, problem to keep your eyes out on.
Right. Now, speaking of problems to keep your eyes on, we got word today that the COVID opt-out deadline is possibly looking at this week being either Thursday or Friday. For those of you who don't know, the new CBA, that was the collective bargaining agreement that was signed by the Players Association and the owners, we're locked in for 10 more years. There's going to be no work stoppage. We don't have to worry about a strike, anything like that. Thank God. But there's a side letter because of this COVID thing for an opt-out. And Delvin McCourty for the Patriots, he came out and blasted the NFL for basically moving this date up. What's your take on moving the date?
I think the NFL is trying to get their ducks lined up right now. I really can't blame them. They've been really lethargic on preparing for what kind of season is going to come here. Now, if we're going to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders, because that's a big topic that broke out today, but how they are going to open up their new stadium and have no fans. And they've already let their season ticket holders know that right now, and that's a big piece there.
Right.
I think the NFL was a little slow, and now they're trying to kind of pull their weight down and throw a little power. I have no problem with the deadline that they're setting, because if this baby is going to start on time, Dean, they have got to straighten this out.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one of the things that the NFL has been criticized about is not having the bubble atmosphere that the NBA has. And we touched on this a little bit in one of our previous episodes, that it's kind of hard to have a bubble atmosphere when you're starting the season up. The NBA is winding the season down. So there's not all the teams there.
Right.
And with MLB is trying to start the season up. They're trying to do a bubble atmosphere, but you're getting all these breakouts of COVID and all these positive tests and everything coming out. But the New Orleans Saints, they went out and rented 4 rooms of a hotel in downtown New Orleans. I believe it's the Lowe's in downtown.
Yeah.
And the owner went ahead and said, hey, we're doing everything we can. There's I think 180 people expected to quarantine in this bubble atmosphere that the Saints are creating.
Well, this is the thing, though, Dean. Shouldn't every NFL team be doing something similar to this? I don't see this as big news. I see this as something that the NFL teams who have the biggest budgets in the world can spend the extra money, get the extra room, get the extra floors. I just think it's going to be standard protocol now coming up in this COVID-filled season.
Here's the thing, and this is speaking strictly from a fan's perspective. Take the Dean logo, take the whole fantasy analyst out of it. Speaking from a fan's point of view, I see a $9 billion industry in the NFL. And whenever there's trade talks, whenever there's contract negotiations, they always talk about billionaires versus millionaires. And we as fans are the ones left holding the bag at the end of the season. I would think that the NFL, if they want to get really serious about this, could go to every team and go, hey, look, this is what we want you to do. We want you to take a note out of the Saints playbook, get a hotel, and we as an organization will go ahead and pay half. Because, I'm sorry, $9 billion, and you're talking about one entity being that $9 billion industry, splitting up, you're just talking about it for one season. And it's not even the entire season. It's just while they're in camp. So I don't see why, if the NFL really wants to step up and really wants to show the fans and these players who have health concerns and are choosing to opt out. And I really haven't seen any huge names opt out yet. But I'll tell you right now, if George Kittle opts out,
That'll be your first big name.
season, that's going to send ripples through the entire league.
Because that's a guy that's obviously on his way to be one of the faces, not only of the 49ers, but the NFL.
Right. And one of the guys, and this is the last thing we're going to get into before we get into today's 10 league do's and don'ts, which is today's topic. Odell Beckham. Everybody knows how much I absolutely adore Odell here on the show.
Little shampoo boy.
Yeah, but he came out and he blasted the NFL owners about not canceling the season altogether, and basically given the indication that they're basically just money grubbing SOBs, that they just want to do this for the money, and if they don't view the players as human and all this other stuff. Now, this is coming from a guy who we just talked about, George Kittle having the star power to send ripples through the NFL. Odell Beckham hasn't done anything for 3 years. I'm looking back on his stats. The first year he played 12 games in 2014, 15 in 2015, 16 in 2016. Then he went down to 4 through injury, 12 in 2018. And last year he played all 16 games, just barely over 1,000 yards, 74 receptions, which, if you take away his injury-prone year, was his lowest of his career. And that includes his 12-game rookie season, where he got 12 touchdowns, 1,305 yards. And aside from that one catch that he had against Dallas,
right,
what else has he done? But he's at superstar status. If he's so concerned about the NFL not shutting the season down, why doesn't he come out and go, hey, y'all do what you want, I'm opting out?
I think he's obviously trying to make waves. I think he doesn't like the way the NFL's really kind of handled this summer, which I just talked about a few minutes ago. And I think that he has become even more and more bitter. Obviously, I think he knows he's not playing at the level that he should be really the last 3 years. And I think he's got that bitter and that kind of want some pub kind of move here, because he is a publicity guy. I mean, look at him. He's obviously, can you say captivating in such a way?
Yeah,
because he is.
I don't know. I got another C-sounding words. It starts with a K. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Kardashian of the NFL. It's just famous for no good reason. So that's my opinion on Odell. So.
Sure. I mean, it's not like it's not mine. I mean,
yeah.
I hasn't done much in the last 3 years.
And anybody out there who's watching the show right now, do me a favor, leave down bottom, subscribe, like, share, leave a comment on your take on Odell, and we'll get a consensus going about this whole topic. So with that said, we're going to take a second. We're going to thank our sponsors, Zia of Lafayette, down on Doucet Road in Lafayette, Louisiana, behind the Grand Theater on Johnson, right in front of Red's Health Club. So if you're down in Louisiana, down in Lafayette area, do me a favor, stop by, say hi to Heath and Tucker and all the guys down there, get you some good food. And, the dining room is open. Come on in and feel free to stay a while, have a drink, and have some grits. The grits are absolutely phenomenal, guys. So let's get into the league do's and don'ts for this year. And like I said in the last episode, we're not just leading you up to the draft. We are preparing you for the rest of the year. So these are going to be some of the things that, yes, you're going to not do or do during your draft, but things that you want to look for throughout the year, okay? My number one do is subscribe to multiple outlets. Don't just have one spot where you're getting all your information from, because you're going to be biased to whatever show you're watching. You guys just heard, I have a bias with Odell. I have a bias with the Cowboys. It's not that I'm not going to tell you the truth about these guys. It's not that I'm not going to break down their possibilities of being phenomenal. I told you guys yesterday on the mock draft that Ezekiel Elliott in the 4th spot, if he's available, is an absolutely phenomenal pick. It's just not mine. I'm not going to lie to you. But if you keep hearing the same thing over and over again, you're going to be more apt to go one direction when you should trust your gut and maybe go another.
Okay. I agree with everything you said there.
So no, my first don't is what I just kind of touched on. Don't allow the personal views of others to affect your choice. Look, analysts are people too. We've all got our bias with or against certain players, certain coaches, certain situations that everybody falls into. So just because you look at one show, they're going to give you stats. And again, this is why I don't like stats. They can give you stats on one guy, and then another show can totally flip it around, give you the exact same guy with different stats, and make you go, I have no idea what I'm thinking about this guy.
Well, the problem is the NFL is such an ever-changing sport where, schemes, depth charts, everything's changing, every year. Guys come into the backfield, guys get drafted in the NFL draft. It changes your backfield, changes your wide receiving core. The schemes are different, like I just said. Obviously, situations are different everywhere, and they change every year.
Yeah, and those are things that you can only get if you're subscribed to multiple sources. As I said in my first due, you got to have, like myself, I've got ESPN, NFL, I've got several fantasy apps that I'm on, and if you look on Twitter, you can find me at FantasyDean20 on Twitter. You can see that I'm following this guy. He's a really cool play-by-play. Oh yeah, that's right, Chet Yoder. Check him out. If you like hockey, I know we're in the South, but look, hockey is actually a really cool sport. I grew up around Washington, D.C. I actually knew one of the Capitals. He went to my church. He's a legend. He's in the Hall of Fame, Mike Gardner. For those of you who don't know, look him up. He was a phenomenal player. Ended his career with the Coyotes in Phoenix. Played for a time with the New York Rangers. Unfortunately, they traded him to Phoenix before they won the Cup, which kind of leaves me bitter toward yet another New York team. So for those of you who don't know, I'm also a diehard Boston Red Sox fan. So my hatred for the Yankees is at peak level. Okay. So, but yeah, like I said, follow multiple outlets, use Twitter, use the social media outlets that we have out there at your disposal. Okay. My number 2, do know your league scoring and rules. Look, just because you play fantasy football for like 3, 4, 5 years doesn't mean that everybody follows the same rules or the same scoring. There's PPR, there's dynasty, there's times when you can get in a league where they have custom scoring rules, where they give you bonuses for guys who kick really long field goals, or guys who have really long touchdown passes or receptions or runs. If you're looking at guys, and this, correct me if I'm wrong, Derrick Henry is a guy who he could have 2 runs, score 3 touchdowns, and you're sitting there with like 30 points at the end of the day. So that's the guy right there that, if you know your scoring rules, that's a guy who could be a lot more valuable for you in certain areas than maybe another player would that gets more volume, but he's not going to score you as many points. And then, of course, if you're going PPR, you're looking at high-volume receivers like Michael Thomas, like D-Hop, like Devontae Adams. So these are going to be guys, and that's going to affect how you draft.
I absolutely agree with all that.
Now, number 2, my number 2, don't join a league that plays a Week 17 championship. Look, if somebody is good enough on your team to get you to the championship, 9 times out of 10 on Week 17, they're going to be sitting on the bench, or they're only going to play half the game because they have already got a playoff spot locked up. And remember, the players that we're focused on play real football. We play fantasy. Okay? They're not concerned that you're in a championship in Week 17. They're concerned that they're playing the playoffs next week.
I disagree. I've played in leagues. Week 17 championships. It hasn't affected me. You got to know how to strategize, though. For all those rookie fantasy football owners, they got to know what they're doing, because Week 17 will slip you up, because you're right. teams do clinch, they do sit. You just got to know who to play. That's where your bench comes into play. You got to have some bench power back there. Guys like a Jordan Reed, you want to pick up, or you picked up Antonio Brown in your last draft last night. So I mean, those are bench guys who can bring those points up and have those huge weeks. I feel like it adds that tricky element to the league that makes you think even harder how to play. I disagree. I like it. I mean, do I prefer it? I don't know if I prefer it, but I like it.
Yeah, like, and Chet just said it. If you're a rookie, don't do it. Okay. Yeah. If you're a rookie, that it's something that you're not ready for yet. Okay. Right. So just pump the brakes on it. If this is like your first or second year playing, wait a second, because you don't know. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be upset, and I don't want to hear anything on the comments down below whenever you go down there and leave them that you told me to play week 17. No, I didn't. I told you, hey, if you are able to follow that, but I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to be upset if you play all year long. You're the number one guy. You go into the playoffs, and you get to the championship, week 17, and you got Lamar Jackson on your team, and they've already locked it up, or you got Drew Brees, and they've already locked it up, and he's sitting on the bench, and who you got to rely on? You going to go out and pick up Fitzpatrick? I mean, come on. And that's if Tua's not starting.
Right.
Now, here's the other thing. Number 3, my number 3 do be flexible during your draft. Make sure you have a plan A, B, C, and D. Okay. Chet, tell me I'm not wrong on this one. Is that you've got to be what we call water, and if you don't know, look, go back and watch the documentary about being water. Okay.
Right. I mean, it's a volume. You know, obviously football is it's a volume of guys. You have your guys, you want to get it. Obviously, depending what your pick is, your first round pick does dictate how your draft is going to go. And people need to understand that. I don't like picks 1 through 5. I've always usually capitalized in the 8 to 12 range. Because I like that later pick, so I can get that second pick right out of the way. But you're right. I mean, you have to have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and you got to look at other people's boards too. A lot of fantasy football owners, especially the new ones, don't look at the board as much as they should to see what other guys got and how you can, I guess you can say, combat that, so to speak.
All right. And look, I'm going to use myself as an example. In my league last year, I was picked 7 out of 10. We had 10 guys in the league.
I like 7 and out of 10.
I picked 7. I wound up, my first pick was D-Hop. My second pick coming around on the short turn was Michael Thomas. My third pick, I got Travis Kelce. He was just there in the third. I'm like, hey.
You loaded up with a nice 3-headed monster right there.
And then when I came back for the fourth round on the short turn again, I wound up getting Chris Carson. Came back again, I got Eckler because everybody was, waiting for Melvin Gordon to come through, and they thought that he'd be ending his holdout. Well, he didn't, and I wound up getting a starting running back in the 5th round.
That is foolish for people to think about Melvin Gordon.
My 10th pick was Lamar Jackson. My 10th round was Lamar.
Right. Well, I mean, right.
Yeah, I caught lightning in the bottle on that one. Right. But my 8th round pick was Jared Goff, and the expectation for Goff last year, we were expecting him to actually do something. I mean, he just fell off.
30-plus touchdowns, big, yeah.
Yeah. So
dropped off.
If the guys in my league had looked at me in, let's say, the 2nd round and gone, okay, he's got 2 really good receivers, and somebody ahead of me went, hey, somebody better step up and take Kelce, or this guy's his receiving core is going to be off the chart. We're not going to be able to touch him. Guys, I lost 1 game, and it was the championship last year. Okay? I made it all the way through undefeated with this team. Okay?
So you went out like the Patriots did when they're trying for that perfect season.
Pretty much, yeah. They ruined my wife ruined my perfect season, but if I'm going to lose to anybody, I will lose to my wife. I don't want to lose to anybody else, just for simple fact.
Lose to your wife.
I will lose to my
Who's
wife.
the last person you want to lose to?
No, I'll lose to her because I beat her twice in the regular season, so she was a little bitter about that. So,
She exacted her revenge.
so she came and got me in the playoffs, which is fine. I'm cool with that. What I didn't want to do is I didn't want to lose to any of the guys that I worked with because I would have to go into work every day and hear how they beat me in the championship game.
Right. And they know what they're doing. Your wife's still learning.
Yeah, she was. But here's the thing, guys, and if this isn't a ringing endorsement for the advice that you're going to get here on Fantasy Football Academy 2020, my wife only listened to me. So I beat myself if you look at it. I mean, I just gave her really good advice, which I'm trying to do for you guys. So that's why I got Chet here. I got Chet here to give you guys some good advice too. So now here's my don't and this kind of ties into what we were talking about the plan A, B, C, and D. Don't think that you will get every player you target. You're not the only one that is targeting a certain player, okay? Don't think that you're the only guy who wants Lamar. Don't think you're the only guy who wants Mahomes or wants CMC or wants, any of these high round draft picks, okay? You're not the only guy. You've got to have that extra plan behind you when these guys go off the board, okay? Once you get your spot that you're drafting in, if you see that you're drafting numbers 4, 5, 6, you're not going to get Saquon. You're not going to get CMC. It's just not going to happen. So
here's your question, though. Do you like to know where you're drafting before the draft, like days before the draft, or do you like to know where you're drafting on the day?
There are two schools of thought on this. I'm of the school of thought it doesn't matter. When I was playing ball in high school, my coach would always tell me, you can take my playbook, give it to the other team. I don't care, because if we execute what we're supposed to do on the field, it won't matter because it won't be able to stop us. It's the same thing with fantasy football in my mind. If you have a plan, if you are able to be water and go out there and be flexible in the draft and execute the team that you want to put together, it's not going to matter where you draft. You're still going to be able to put together a championship team.
I agree.
Yeah. Now, there are those guys out there who want to know, who want to try to plan it out. And I'm going to tell you right now, I've talked to those guys before, and the sense that I get from all of those guys is that knowing where you're going to draft, it almost cripples you in the draft because you already have this pre-designated spot that you want to pick all these guys. And when that gets messed up, these guys don't have a plan A, B, or C. They might have a plan B, but there is no follow-up after that.
I prefer drafting on the day.
Yes, which is what we do in our league of record. So now, here's the other thing. For my fourth do know your secondary players. These are guys that when you draft them in the later rounds, these are the guys that will make or break your squad later in the season, okay? We're talking about guys like Cortland Sutton last year. He blew up with Joe Falco in Denver before Drew Lock took over, okay? Drew Lock came in. He didn't do so hot. Statistically, he kind of looked like he was doing good, but if you look at it from a fantasy point of view, he really didn't do that much once Drew Lock took over, okay? Joey F., he kind of clicked with him a little better. But these guys later in the draft, after you get past the big names that everybody knows, a lot of these rookie owners, they're at a loss. And if you know who to pick later in the draft, like we talk about Alexander Madison as a handcuff for Dalvin Cook. We talk about Tony Pollard as a handcuff for Zeke Elliott, okay? These guys are going to make or break your squad, and these are the gems that you're going to find later. Remember, gems aren't laying up top. You got to dig deep for them.
That's why they're called diamonds in the rough.
Exactly. Now, here's the don't. Don't be influenced by personal preference. This is a do as I say, not as I do type deal, okay? Everybody knows that I cannot stand the Cowboys. There's no way I'm rooting for a Cowboy for under any circumstance, okay? I take that back. The only time I've ever rooted for Dallas is when it benefits the Redskins, okay? When it benefits Washington, like if it's the last week of the season.
Against the Eagles or
against the Giants. And if the Cowboys lose, or if the Cowboys win, the Redskins are in the playoffs. Now, that hasn't happened since I can't remember when,
Right.
but that's the only scenario that I will ever root for Dallas in. And I'm sure you feel the same way about Seattle.
I can't stand Seattle, but I mean, it doesn't shy away from drafting Russell Wilson in the fantasy football draft because I've done it before. Because whether I like it or not, Russell Wilson is going to give me the numbers to give me a championship. I mean, it's chalk with him. So I can't stand that little guy. He's such a pest. But I have to.
Now, I got to ask you something where I'm taking a quick detour here. Nate Burleson came out on the show on ESPN. He came out and he said that Russell Wilson has not had one single MVP vote. It has always been someone else, and he's getting disrespected. He predicted that this year he will have at least one MVP vote, and he went in step farther and said that Russell Wilson will win MVP this year.
Well, his window is pretty thin right now. I mean, you'd have to think Seattle's probably going to be good for maybe 2-3 more years before he starts to become, on the tail end of 30 for us. But you're right. I mean, he should be getting MVP votes. He has been disrespected really from the expert panelists. People know how good he is, but people just don't value people. I don't know. It just seems like there's the overwhelming amount of, popularity towards the other guys.
Yeah. Now, here's my number 5. Do be active on the waiver wire. Remember, the team that you draft is not going to be the team that you end up with. Okay, and whether this comes through waiver wire pickups or trade acquisitions, or however you can get a player, whoever you're drafting, your team is not going to be the exact same team at the end of the season as it is at the beginning. But if you're not active on the waiver wire, you're going to miss out, and you're not going to be able to win a title.
My fantasy football team has never ever been the same than to the day I drafted it. So it's always been changing. There's always been trades. And it's just the way.
Yeah. Now, here's my don't is.
I mean, it's always been. Well, I mean, deadline deal.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. My don't ignore draft proposals. A lot of guys, they see it. It's really, for some leagues, it's really, really hard to trade with another owner, because you go through this thing, and I don't know about anybody else, and Chet, you can either back me up or disagree with me on this one. If I get a trade proposal, I get that anxiety of, okay, if I give him this guy, then what am I missing out on? And I look at it that way, as opposed to looking at it as, what am I getting? What is it? How's it going to benefit me?
It is frustrating when you get to trades, because sometimes if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And sometimes I don't like to dip into that. And so I will get proposals all the time from my friends, and we'll just be trying to kind of, there have been stuff that, you do get the lousy end of the stick sometimes. And you're right. I mean, you are going to second guess yourself when it comes to trade proposals. So
yeah. Now look, for me personally, I know that I had 1 year, I think it was a couple of years ago, I made 3 different trades in 1 year, which is a really high number for fantasy football. But it seemed like every person that I traded with, every player that I gave up, turned around and got hurt. So I was like totally blessed. But after the second guy got hurt, do you know how hard it was for me to pull off that third trade? Because nobody wanted to trade with me, because they all thought that the trades with me were cursed. That if you got the guy that I was giving away, it looked like a really good deal, but a week or 2 weeks later, he was hurt and he was worthless for the rest of the season. Last year, I really wanted Melvin Gordon when he came back, and I wound up I gave up Terry McLaurin for Melvin Gordon, and I gave up AP. Okay. Now, last year, AP was doing good. Terry McLaurin was doing good. Fortunately for me, I gave up Terry McLaurin right when Haskins came in, and their chemistry just fell apart. I don't know what happened,
Right.
but they were not doing the same thing that he was doing with Case Keenum, okay? So I was very fortunate in that, and I got Melvin Gordon because I also had Eckler, and I didn't want Eckler's reduction in production to be affected by Gordon and in turn affect my fantasy status. So I started both these guys. They were absolutely phenomenal for me. It's not a strategy that I endorse, but it just worked out for me that year. So
the best trade that I've made was a 1-for-1 swap, and you would love this. I traded Julio Jones and I got Diop.
yeah,
Just because my buddy wanted Julio and I wanted Diop so badly. So it was really like one of those mutual 1-for-1s, and I won the end of that deal.
And look, this is where when you're sitting in the draft and you're with your buddies and you make a selection, you listen to the first guy that starts cussing when you make that pick. That's the guy to target later in the year for that draft, okay? Make a little note, all right? Be like, hey, Jerry was cussing when I picked up Julio. Jerry was cussing when I picked up, I don't know, Todd Gurley.
There's more than one cussing.
Oh, yeah, there's usually more than one.
That's what makes it fun.
If you're doing it right, if you're drafting right, you should have a cuss word on your pick at least every 3 rounds, okay? At least. If you don't have a cuss through your entire draft when you're drafting, something's wrong and you should be concerned about your team.
Right.
So, and here's my number 6 is do stay aware of the COVID and injuries list. This is the year when backups and handcuffs can be huge for fantasy. There has not been a year to my memory where there has been more emphasis on backups and handcuffs for going into the fantasy draft than this year.
You're right. I mean, obviously, there's going to be more football players opting out because of COVID. So you have to be aware of that, and they can opt out at any time. So that's, always for now,
Right.
And obviously that deadline hopefully will hit, then they'll be locked in. But there's so much uncertainty when you go into this draft like any other. It's to the point where you need that extra assistance, which we're obviously providing here at the academy. So it is going to be very interesting. Like you said, you got Antonio Brown in your bench. That might have been one of the best pickups, little hidden gem right there, going into it. So.
Right. And guys, look, if week 8 rolls around and you're sitting there with Antonio Brown and it comes out that he's not going to be signed with anybody, drop him. You didn't lose anything.
Take a flyer.
Yeah, exactly. Now, here's the thing about the COVID and injury list. The COVID injury list is the same thing as paying attention to your waiver wire, okay? It's something that's got to be done throughout the season because, yes, even though this COVID opt-out deadline is coming probably this week, either Thursday or Friday, we know that anybody can pop up positive at any time during the year, just the same way that anybody can pop up hurt with some kind of fluke injury and affect your fantasy team, okay? And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid as many hiccups and pitfalls as we can help you with. Now, here's my don't. Don't hold players that aren't producing. Now, this happens a lot with big names bust. There are guys out there who bust, who just have this, what Chet calls the sexy appeal. Okay? They got that sexy name, and Odell is one of them. I mean, Odell busted 3 years in a row, but he's still being drafted in the top 4 rounds, okay? Why? How many
Because people are anticipating the breakout year.
Yeah. Look, guys, I'm telling you, look at his quarterback play. He's got Case Keenum behind Baker Mayfield, and Baker Mayfield's on a short leash, okay?
Yeah.
If Case Keenum comes in, I will tell you right now, Jarvis Landry will be the receiver that you will want to have on your team, okay?
I wonder when Jarvis Landry gets drafted in fantasy football drafts. It is very intriguing. I've seen some drafts where he has been reached at. I've seen some where he's been kind of dipping down, slipping down to the 9th or 10th. He is a very intriguing player in this year's draft.
Yeah, he's somebody that actually outproduced Odell last year. I mean, that's why, shoot, they have Chris Godwin over Mike Evans in a lot of drafts, and Mike Evans has been by far and away the better receiver, but because Brady is coming in and Brady likes the slap guy, Chris Godwin all of a sudden is promoted above Mike Evans. Now, my number 7 do remember to play the matchups with your secondary players. Look, there are some guys, they're starters for a reason. Okay, there's some guys that you're just going to lock in and you're going to leave them alone. Okay, you're not benching CMC, you're not benching Saquon, you're not going to bench Julio, you're not going to bench Lamar. Okay, these are guys you're just not going to sit on your bench because they're just too valuable and their upside is just way too good for them to be sitting on your bench getting points for you that don't count. The secondary players, these are the guys that you look at and you go, okay, do I start Kareem Hunt or do I start Cam Akers? Okay, in my flex position, who do I start? Look at their matchup. Look at the defense that they're facing. Look at how they're being used throughout the year. Okay, and this is the thing. This will not come into play until week 3 or 4 because it's going to take you 3 or 4 weeks to realize who's being used how. And here's my don't, and this ties right into what I just talked about. Don't get cute with your starters. Locked players, like I just said, are locked for a reason. Don't try to get cute and think that just because someone's playing against, I don't know, let's say the Lions, who have an absolute trash defense, just because they're playing against the Lions, don't think that you can take someone out because they're playing San Fran or they're playing Baltimore and they just have a starch defense. These volume guys are still going to get their touches regardless of the defense that they play against.
I agree.
And I'm sure you're going to be seeing that with San Fran, with Raheem Mostert. And, I mean, he's basically going to be the guy. They paid the man. I mean, there's been enough publicity.
Right.
I mean, I don't see where Tevin Coleman can take him over. I know that Shanahan loves to run multiple backs.
Well, he loves Jerick McKinnon, the guy who's been injured the last 2 years. Right. So if they can get the jet going, they feel like he can be really the number 1 back. But it's kind of interesting. It's just there's a lot of guys in the backfield, like Washington.
Yeah, like I said,
and they're going to use them.
Yeah, you're not going to, like I said, you're not going to see the trends until week 3 or 4. So those are things to pay attention to. Now, my number 8, do be aware of your opponent's roster. Look, if you're facing somebody, let's say that you got Calvin Ridley, okay? And Calvin Ridley hasn't been doing really too hot for you, but you know that he's coming due. And you're playing the guy who has Matt Ryan, start Calvin Ridley. Okay? You want the receiver for the guy you're playing the quarterback against. Or if you've got Teddy Bridgewater, you're going to want to start Robbie Anderson.
These are important points, though, Dean, because these are matchups where you could lose the game before it starts.
Exactly.
If you do those kinds of moves. Trust your receiver, trust who you got, and he will give you the points that you need, and the rest of your team will make up for it if you don't get enough.
Right. Now, here's something that not a lot of people think about, and a lot of people depend on to make their draft selections. Don't use the ADP to draft your team. Use it to draft someone else's. And here's what I mean by that. Before I lose anybody on this, when you see the ADP come out and you see that rookie owner coming in, and please don't be that rookie owner coming in with the cute little magazine that's got CMC on the cover, or it's got Derrick Henry on the cover, throwing out some bold prediction about he's going to get most rushing yards this season, which I've seen those in Walmart right now, okay? And you see the guy, he sits down and he pulls out the ADP, where he pulls out his cheat sheet and he's looking down, and you can tell by the way he's drafting that all he's doing is going down and picking the next best player. The next best player might not be the best player for your team, for your makeup of what you're trying to do. So don't use the ADP to draft your team. You use it against the other owners. you can look at the board and you can see who this guy's going to draft. And when you make those selections, like picking Derrick Henry third instead of Zeke, that's going to throw somebody off. When you jump up and you take Josh Jacobs with the first pick in the second round, and somebody's like, wait a minute, he's supposed to fall to me at the 5th spot. That's not where his ADP is. Well, it might not be an ADP for them, but it's an ADP for you. Use your own personal ADP. You trust your gut on this, guys. And here's the other thing, guys. Do be proactive on the runs, okay? We've talked about runs before, Chet, and we see where they start, we see where they end, and we don't want the Academy subscribers here to get the leftovers. We want you guys to eat and eat hearty here at the Academy, okay? We want you guys to be able to, when you see the 5th round coming up and you know that those quarterbacks are going to be gone in the 6th, jump up to the 5th. Take the guy you want. Start that run. Go ahead. If you want Dak Prescott, go out and take Dak Prescott. Then you're going to see, oh, my God, he took Dak Prescott. That's the guy I wanted. Now I got to go out and get Russell Wilson. What does that do for the rest of the league? That forces these guys to abandon the plan that they had where they were going to take a running back or a receiver that is going to wind up on your team because they're panicking.
Cannot play afraid.
Exactly. Now, here's my don't on this. Don't overreact to runs. And this is the flip side of this coin, guys. You want to be proactive with runs. You want to be able to get the players that you want to get. But if somebody's starting to run, let's say they're starting to run on wide receivers, and you're one to draft a running back, go ahead, let them. There's enough depth at the wide receiver position. You can get value later on. Just because you miss out on Calvin Ridley doesn't mean you can't get Terry McLaurin later on.
We're not comparing Terry McLaurin and Calvin Ridley, are we?
No, we're not. No, we're not comparing that. But the value.
I know.
Okay. The value. I know you got to give me crap about it because he's my boy.
That's their only receiver. Who else they got?
That's what I'm saying. He's value, guys.
They're going to win 11 games because 11. Of their defense.
11. I'm telling you right now. Now, look, I'm going to tell you right now that week 14 might be a little rough because they're playing San Fran, but we'll see how that goes. Now, I believe it's week 7 that they play Baltimore, so I'm chalking that up to a loss right now.
They're going to be 3-6 by week 9, buddy. So we'll just talk.
Well, no, look, because their bye week is week 8.
Oh, the bye. Sorry. Okay, 3-6 by week 9.
Trust me, look, I looked this up before we got on. Just because I knew that Professor Chet was going to give me guff about my bold prediction about the Redskins finishing 11-5.
You're a fan. I get it.
So, hey, and I'm a DC diehard from way back. I mean, if you guys could see the memorabilia that I have around here, okay, I have a.
What's funny about you is you used to ask for the love when you used to call in to the sports talk show back in Lafayette, yes. Sports chat. When I'll be like, oh my goodness, Neil from New Iberia, like, are we really going to talk about Washington, who hasn't won anything at all?
Yes, we're talking about Washington. We definitely are. For those of you who don't know the history between myself and Chet was the producer for an AM talk show, 103.7 The Game down here in Lafayette, Louisiana. And I would call into the morning show all the time. And I would talk straight. I would call in only during the NFL season or when there's ever any big NFL news. And these guys knew me by name. They already knew what I was talking about.
You will always be Neil from New Iberia. You do know that, right?
Yeah, but don't say that for the wife because we've got some bad juju coming out of New Iberia. So we're not. I'm Neil and Branch. When I call up now, I'm Neil and Branch. So that's the new logo. That's the new brand that we're pushing here. So. Yeah. All right, guys. So we're toward the end. We're on number 10. And this is a theme of the Academy, okay? Here on Fantasy Football Academy 2020, The number one thing that I want you to learn, if you learn nothing else from this show, is trust your gut, okay? You get these feelings for a reason. Go with them. And don't trust stats. We talked about this earlier in the show. Stats can be used for multiple points of view, okay? Good or bad, however you want to frame the stat. Use all of the info, including your gut, that you gather, and then trust your gut and make that selection with confidence, okay?
Stats apply to certain players. Like, let's take example like D-Hop. I mean, consistently across the board, 1,300 yards passing. I mean, 1,300 yards receiving. He's got over 10 touchdowns every year. Maybe a deceiving stat. Oh boy, maybe like Aaron Rodgers. A guy who's been a little bit wavy. The last couple of years, especially now. But you're right. I mean, stats are deceiving. You have to do your check your history on certain players.
Yeah,
if you're
definitely.
new to the game. But most new fantasy football players are still NFL fans, though. So it is key to have that knowledge in the back of your head.
Yeah. Now, look, guys, I don't want anyone to ever say that this show doesn't break news as soon as it happens. We just got this in. It just came through on my feed that the NFL has set the opt-out date for Thursday. So when we talk again, we're going to be talking about all of the opt-out players. So when we do our next Monday show, we're going to be talking about everybody who's opted out. So if anyone has any kind of health concern, any kind of reservations about what the NFL is doing to protect their players, they're going to opt out before Thursday, okay? Thursday's the deadline. It has been set. It just came through on ESPN. ESPN is just reporting that the opt-out date is Thursday. So, breaking news, straight to the Academy viewers, guys. I don't know what else we can do.
Well, I know what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be in praying mode that my man George Kittle does not opt out, because he will be a bum if he doesn't. I mean, I don't know if I could stand it. I love the guy to death, and if he walks away from the game, oh my goodness, it's just, I don't even want to get into it. But
well, look, if it happens, Academy students, right here on this show, we will be talking about how George Kittle's a bum for walking away. Okay, so look,
he loves the game too much.
Exactly, and look, I want you guys to understand something right now. My wife went through COVID. It was a absolutely horrible experience for her. It was a horrible experience for me. I got nothing but love for any player who's out there who decides to opt out for health reasons, because they have loved ones at home. There's been stories about guys who they've just had a baby. They've had cancer in their family, or they've suffered through cancer, or their kid had cancer, or something tragic on a health front has affected their decision to play. And I totally get that, and I totally support that. My thing with guys who opt out just to opt out, that's where I got to draw the line at. Okay, I get that everyone has their own decision, and this whole Odell Beckham thing about the owners not looking at them as human and treating them, like their property. Everyone in the history of the NFL has always said that this is a business first and foremost, and that's how it's treated. You knew what you were getting into when you signed that contract. You knew what you were getting into when you strapped on the pads for the first time and you made it a point that you were going to be in the NFL. You knew what you were getting into. Don't sit there now and try to turn things around and want to just change everything because you got your feelings hurt, okay? That's my little rant for the day. So, guys, I want you to take away from this show of this do's and don'ts with the biggest do in fantasy football. Right here, listen up, guys. Come in close. Listen, biggest do in fantasy football. Have fun. This game is all about fun, guys. This is taking your fandom from here to here, okay? If you're a fan of the NFL, fantasy football, elevates that. Okay.
Well, the draft is supposed to be the most enjoyable day
Exactly.
of your fantasy football season because you're with your friends, either virtually or in person. Probably this season might be a little bit more virtual drafts for people. It's just fine. But you have that smack talk, you have the testosterone. It's obviously a lot of fun.
Right.
And, you're mixing a nine.
And guys, look, for anyone who's not in our draft or not in our league of record, strap up. It's about to get crazy because once we do our draft, the spot for trash talking in our league will be right here on this channel down in the comments section. Every single member of the league will be subscribed to this channel, and the only way that you can win the Golden Trash Can Award for the most trash talk or the best trash talk is to record it down bottom. If you want to get in on it, if you want to be part of the trash talking, get down, subscribe, like, and share for me. Go look for us on Twitter at FantasyDean20. You can search Fantasy Football Academy 2020, and we'll pop up. You'll see us. And while you're there, go ahead, follow Chet at Chet_Yoder and see what he's been doing up in Shreveport with the Mud Bugs up there in Shreveport, the hockey team for the Shreveport area, okay? Guys, Chet, this has been a blast. Love it as always. I appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I always have fun coming on with you.
Anytime. Hey, look, guys, check us out on Twitter at FantasyDean20. Down bottom, subscribe, like, and share for me. This has been the Dean, and this has been Fantasy Football Academy 2020 on a Team Build Tuesday. Guys, take care of each other. Remember to mask up if you're going out.